In ancient China, many tribes and ethnic groups coexisted on the land and gradually developed their own unique cultures and social structures. Among these tribes, the names of the Yellow Emperor and Chiyou are particularly prominent, and their legendary stories are still being passed on by word of mouth. Huangdi, the embodiment of wisdom and benevolence, is honored as the ancestor of the Chinese nation. He not only possessed great talent, but also had a visionary ideal, dreaming of a harmonious and orderly society in which all people could coexist peacefully and progress together. Chiyou, on the other hand, the descendant of the god of war, was known for his extraordinary force and mastery of weapons, and his tribe was feared for its bravery and ferocity. Over time, as the two tribes grew in power and influence, competition for resources and territorial rivalry gradually became inevitable. The Yellow Emperor's pursuit of peace and coexistence of the concept of conquest and expansion of Chiyou's ambitions irreconcilable, this deep-rooted contradictions eventually led to a war to determine the fate of the two tribes. When the conflict between the Yellow Emperor and Chiyou reached its peak, a magnificent war broke out in the land of Zhuolu. The army led by Chiyou was like a flooding beast, the iron armor shining with cold light, the war horse neighing, the war flag hunting in the wind. His soldiers are all wearing heavy armor, holding spears and huge axes, their gazes are full of desire for battle and belief in victory. Qi himself was like a stormy wind on the battlefield, his figure shuttling back and forth across the front line, inspiring his soldiers to fight. The Yellow Emperor's army, under his command, displays a very different look from that of Chiyou. The Yellow Emperor wore simple battle robes, and there was not only determination in his eyes, but also a vision of the future. He did not wish to solve his problems through needless killing, but in order to protect his people and his ideals, he had to take up arms. His soldiers, though not as numerous as Chiyou, were each inspired by the Yellow Emperor's philosophy. They focused more on strategy and cooperation, and each strike was full of wisdom and courage. With the stirring of war drums, the two armies finally started a fierce encounter in the field of Zhuolu. The battlefield was filled with smoke and dust, and the sound of swords and knives was deafening. Chiyou's army, by virtue of its superiority in number and strength, had the upper hand at the initial stage. Although Huangdi's army was in a disadvantageous position, they were able to flexibly adjust their tactics under Huangdi's skillful command to effectively avoid Chiyou's army's fierce attack and look for opportunities to counterattack. This battle is not only a military competition, but also the collision of two very different civilization concepts. Chiyou's army with its overwhelming power to launch an offensive, trying to conquer everything by force, and the Yellow Emperor hopes that through wisdom and strategy to guard the land and people's peace. The war enters the most critical moment. Chiyou shows his unfathomable magic power. Under his command, the sky suddenly became gloomy, a layer of dense fog began to spread out, quickly covering the entire battlefield. This is not an ordinary fog, it is so thick that it is almost touchable. The line of sight is seriously blocked. The soldiers of the Yellow Emperor suddenly found themselves like in the boundless darkness, even the companions are difficult to recognize. The soldiers of the Yellow Emperor's army began to feel confused and panic, their formation was disrupted, unable to effectively organize the attack or defense. Chiyou's soldiers, on the other hand, were as comfortable as if they were in their own domain. They traveled through the fog like ghosts, causing great pressure and losses to the Yellow Emperor's army. In such a situation, the war seems to have tilted. Chiyou is only one step away from the final victory. However, right at this most critical moment, Huangdi showed extraordinary leadership and wisdom. He knew that in such adversity, the only way to find a way out of the situation was to rely on wisdom and innovation. One of the Yellow Emperor's advisors, a wise man named Feng Ho, came up with a plan to build a guide car. They worked day and night to create this amazing device that could show the way in any environment. When the compass car was brought into the battlefield, things began to change. The Yellow Emperor's soldiers were able to penetrate the fog and find their way back to each other and the battlefield with the help of the compass car. With their morale restored, the Yellow Emperor's army began to organize their counterattacks methodically. Their movements became more coordinated, and their attacks more powerful. The compass car was not only a physical device, but also became a symbol of overcoming difficulties in the hearts of the soldiers. Seeing this, Chiyou felt an unprecedented pressure. He did not expect that, in the situation where he was almost dominant, the Yellow Emperor was able to rely on a small device to turn the situation around. The balance of this war began to quietly tilt. As the Yellow Emperor's army broke through the mist, the battle situation ushered in a sea change. Not content with this, Huangdi decided to launch a full-scale counterattack to decide the outcome of the war in one fell swoop. At his command, the soldiers who had lost their way in the mist were reborn, and the fire of battle was once again lit up in their eyes. The Yellow Emperor knows that it is difficult to decide to win the war by human power alone. Faced with the nearly invincible army of Chiyou, Huangdi decided to rely on more ancient and powerful forces. At his deep call, the legendary Yinglong came from the sky in response to the call, with a monstrous might and the mysterious ability to control the forces of nature. Yinglong's appearance was like the most shocking miracle in heaven and earth. Its body was huge, hovering over the clouds, and when its wings were spread, the winds rose, thunder rumbled, and electricity flashed. As Yinglong joined in, the situation on the battlefield began to change drastically. Should the dragon call the wind and rain, thunder and lightning with its will and move, fierce thunder and lightning not only knocked down the weapons of the Qi army, but also in the hearts of soldiers planted the seeds of fear. The Yellow Emperor's army saw this, the morale of the army. They should be in the dragon set off a storm like a tiger down the mountain, the courage to go forward. Every attack was full of strength and courage, and every charge seemed to carry the natural fury and unstoppable power. In the face of such a situation, Chiyou and its army for the first time felt a deep powerlessness and fear. Chiyou had thought himself invincible, but in front of Yinglong's divine power, his power seemed so small. His soldiers, under the impact of lightning and wind, began to lose the order of the battle. The original tight formation was disrupted, and morale fell rapidly. They were no longer the invincible army, but a group of ants struggling in front of the forces of nature. Qi tried to reorganize his army, tried to use his power to fend off Yinglong, but every time he was repulsed by thunder and lightning, every attempt ended in failure. His prestige, his power, seemed so powerless in this confrontation with the forces of nature. Chiyou's army, the power that once swept through thousands of troops, began to crack in this battle, and the fear in the soldiers' hearts gradually transformed into a premonition of defeat. The Yellow Emperor saw all this and knew that the moment of victory was approaching. He did not take the enemy lightly for this reason, but commanded each attack more cautiously to ensure that he could completely crush Chiyou's army. Under his command, united with the natural power of Yinglong, Huangdi's army was like a dike-breaking flood, unstoppably rushing towards Chiyou's army, pushing them step by step towards extinction. Finally, in this protracted duel, the Yellow Emperor's army completely routed Chiyou's troops. Chiyou was captured alive in the heat of battle. His almost unbeatable strength in front of wisdom and courage seemed so small. Instead of executing Chiyou immediately, the Yellow Emperor brought him back and displayed him for all the people to see, which was not only a personal sanction for Chiyou, but also an end to violence and evil. The battle ended in victory for the Yellow Emperor, who not only proved his power, but also demonstrated the importance of wisdom and justice. In the aftermath of the war, Huangdi used his wisdom to continue to advance civilization and usher in a whole new era. The war, in turn, has become a chapter in the legend, inspiring countless later generations to pursue justice, courage and wisdom.